For the first time in way too long, welcome to Dishing Heat with Wolfie and Big Shot Song. I'm your host, Nathan Wolf.
And I'm your co-host Max Song.
It is currently August 28th at way too early in the morning, and today we'll be reviewing teams' records and performances last season with report cards, and then giving our predictions on seeding for this season. For today, we'll be starting with the Eastern Conference, and we'll go in order of last year's seeding. With that out of the way, what did you think of the Heat last year?
In terms of grading, I gave the Miami Heat B plus. To me, an A team has to make it farther in the playoffs than they did with the expectations they had as the first seed. But that being said, they had a couple of bright spots. Hero was the sixth man of the year. They made the conference finals, which is still good. But Duncan Robinson sucked. Kyle Lowry sucked. And I think really the main point was that Kyle Lowry was not what they expected. If Kyle Lowry was the Raptors championship version, I think they would have beat the Celtics in the conference finals and actually went to the finals. But I think it was disappointing that they only made it to the conference finals, considering they were pretty hard set in the top seed in the last couple of games of the season. And really, what carried them through the entire season was Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. And I think it was more or less of a fluke, so I give them a B plus.
That's definitely fair. I actually gave them an A minus. They were first in the conference, which is impressive for this team, and they had a narrow defeat in the conference finals. But the reason why I give them an A minus is because honestly, I think they overachieved for what they were supposed to do. I was surprised that they even got to the conference final in the first place, and Jimmy Butler definitely was the reason they overachieved. But he's done this before with the Heat, so it's not like this is like a one-time thing. In the bubble, Jimmy Butler also kind of overachieved to the point where maybe it's not even overachieving. Maybe it's just the guy he is. I will definitely agree with you that Lowry was horrific, but even despite that, they still made the conference finals. Like if Lowry improves this season, they have a chance. I still don't see them getting terribly far, and we can get to that in a minute here. But I don't know. I can justify the fact that it's A minus because they were the first seed, but they didn't make the finals, so they can't be an A. But at the same point, the fact that they were even the first seed, I think, bumps them up to an A minus over a B plus. But that's just me.
Just another point on that. I think I made my prediction, not sorry, not my prediction, my grading based off of the players mostly, not how far they got. Because I think Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, well, you're right, he's that guy. But when I look at all the individual players on the Heat, other than Lowry and Duncan Robinson, I think Bam Adebayo was so disappointing. At the beginning of the season, he made some statement like he's going to attempt to make 1 3 a game or shoot 1 3 a game at least. And Jimmy Butler said he'd take some money from him if he didn't do that. And Bam ended up, I believe, shooting 0 threes this season. There's so many games when I watch the Heat where I'm just telling Bam to get in the paint and bully them, or he has that midi game in him, but he just doesn't shoot enough of them. And it's just so frustrating to watch him, and I don't think he's improved enough as a player.
That's definitely fair. And I think when you look at this team, like if you look at the roster, I mean, Hero had an awesome season, six man of the year. And his splits were actually insane. I just love watching Hero shoot threes. He makes them at such a high clip. Same with like Struess and Martin. They have so many 3 point shooters in this team. But yeah, I would definitely say it's fair to grade this team poorly based off its players. I will say that the players are better more as like a sum of their parts. Plus, you have to look at the fact that when Oladipo did play, he was good, especially in the playoffs. And he didn't play a lot of the regular season, so you can definitely look at that as well. And I just think when you look at this team, like yes, individually, maybe the numbers weren't great, and Adebayo needs work. But Adebayo still had 19 points a game. He still shot decent splits from two. Yes, I agree with you. I think he can develop a 3 point game. I think he has it in him, and he's young enough that he's got time. Uh, but I just think when you look at this team, you have to look at the way that, like, how their playoff run was, because somehow they were all like, and then they still were the first seed, and then somehow, even though again all the players were kind of they still made it to 7 games in the conference final.
Yeah, fair. B plus and A minus are a pretty close rating, anyways. So I think we can move on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we move on, which seed do you have them being this year?
I actually have them dropping 4 seeds, so as the fifth seed this year, and that's multiple reasons. So as you said, I think the season was more or less a fluke. A lot of the players meshed way better than they thought. I don't think Lowry's going to get better. I actually think he's going to get worse despite all the weight he dropped. And of course, they lost PJ Tucker, and they got no one to replace him. And I think he was an underrated part of their team, especially on the defensive end. Like PJ Tucker's the type of guy that you can have 0 points in the stats, but he'll play the whole game and he'll still have a really good game. And they lost him, and nothing replaces that. So I think they're going to be the fifth seed.
That's very fair. I missed the 4 seed. Again, they were the 1 seed. I'm with you. They lose spots. They lose PJ Tucker. the team overachieved last year. I just can't see them staying where they were, especially since all the teams that I am putting above them, and even some of the teams under them, got better. They're one of the only teams in the top of the East that got worse, especially when you look at they lose PJ Tucker to a rival team, which I see being ahead of them. We'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, I do agree with you for sure. They drop spots. I just have them dropping a little less than you do. But for our next team, we have the 2 seed last year, which was the Boston Celtics. What do you have the Celtics at this year?
I gave the Celtics an A. They had a miraculous turnaround in the middle of the season. I think they were at one point 23 and 24, and then next thing you know, there's something like 48 and 28, which is ridiculous. At the beginning of the season, Brown went off, but they were missing a lot of players due to COVID and injuries. But they really turned it around in the middle of the season. They made the finals, of course, which I think if any team makes the finals, you can't give them anything less than an A. Obviously, Smart won the Defensive Player of the Year. That's debatable whether or not he deserved it. I think Drew Holiday is a better defender, and that's what the stats actually show. But he won it, and I think you should give the Celtics credit for that because they had an amazing defense. So yeah, I don't think you can give them anything short of an A.
Agreed. I have this an A. It's a very simple explanation. The team makes the final. They started the season awfully. The only appropriate grade's an A. It's the same things you said. I don't really see any other way to justify it. I think this just makes sense. You have the breakout of Robert Williams, and honestly, he was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. This team was just really, really solid after we didn't necessarily see them getting there early in the season. And when you make the finals, even though their finals performance was not excellent, they're still definitely an A. The more interesting thing is, where do you have them this season?
I have them as the first seed. I think they just got better. They got Malcolm Brogdon for pennies on the dollar. They traded away, I think it was Aaron Neesmith and a first round pick, which is a steal in my opinion for Malcolm Brogdon. I think exactly what they need actually. He's a shot creating guard that is very good at playmaking. And I think last season what they were missing a lot is the playmaking because their Achilles heel was their turnovers. And that's, I think, the main reason why they actually lost the finals. And I think Malcolm Brogdon will help them a lot with that. They also got Gallinari, who unfortunately just tore his meniscus in the FIBA World Cup. But I think he might come back near the end of the season, and Gallinari is a big guy that can space the floor, and I don't see them getting any worse, so I have them as a first seed.
That's fair for sure. I'm the second seed. I'm gonna assume that Gallinari's not gonna play because of his age recovering from that injury. I think if he was younger, he could definitely come back from that, maybe late season. But I saw that this morning, and I was thinking, nah, I can't even include him. But they did reload with the huge addition of Malcolm Brogdon. They really didn't give up any major pieces in return, like you say. If he can return to anything near that 50, 40, 90 season on that last year in Milwaukee, or even the second year with the Pacers, he was shooting great splits. He actually averaged, I believe, 7 assists his first year with the Pacers, then 6 and 6. He's definitely a playmaking upgrade over Marcus Smart. I still can't believe Marcus Smart's a point guard, if I'm being honest. Malcolm Brogdon is the true point guard. I just think if you see what he was, and if he plays a good season, he can fit back into a role. He doesn't need to be averaging 20 anymore. He can go back to averaging 16 like he did with the Bucks. It's worth mentioning, I do think this team's the 2 seed just because I think it's going to take a minute for them to all gel. Not that long, though, honestly, but just a little bit of time. And there's also that slump. Whenever you lose a finals, I swear teams get worse to start the next season. So I just kind of see that happening. But I definitely wouldn't be shocked if they're the 1 seed. I feel like the 1 and 2 are definitely interchangeable. Speaking of the 1 seed for me, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. What did you give the Milwaukee Bucks for last season?
I gave them a B plus. I think they had a great regular season. With Brook Lopez going out, I think Giannis really stepped up. Giannis had an MVP type season. Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton were both amazing. I think Drew was a little bit better. And, well, I think they would have beat the Celtics, quite frankly, in the second round if Chris Middleton wasn't injured. And I don't think it would have been awfully close. Probably won in something like 6 games. I just can't give them anything higher than a B plus because they didn't make it past the second round. But I think that was expected with the Chris Middleton injury. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I gave them a B. They probably should have won that second round series is exactly what I put, and the East, honestly. But they lose Middleton, and it creates that really unfortunate, if not disappointing, second round exit. Allen, Connaughton, and Porter all had awesome seasons to support the also spectacular Big Three. The season is just really tough to grade, though, because the only thing that we have this season to lead up to was expectations of a final appearance, because that's what they had last season. And anything short of that is definitely a disappointment, even though the circumstances were definitely unfortunate. So I just give them a solid B.
That's fair. I just think I graded them more on, like you said, the additions that they had. I don't like Grayson Allen. I don't think really anyone likes Grayson Allen, but he was great for them last season. And I think especially Bobby Portis. Well, everyone loves Bobby Portis, and he was amazing for them, especially when Brook Lopez was out. So I think based off of the player performances, I think a lot of them overperformed, and that's why I gave them slightly higher than a B. But yeah, I agree. On the season as a whole, it was a little bit disappointing because they didn't make it back to the finals, but I still gave them a B plus.
That's fair. I will argue that I don't know if they necessarily overperformed. I see that Portis, the player he was last season, I think that's him. Same with Grayson Allen. I liked Grayson Allen actually. I know I don't not liked him. No one likes him, but I actually enjoyed watching him on Memphis last season before he came to Milwaukee. When they acquired him, I thought that was a huge deal that I didn't think enough people were talking about. Him and Portis, I've been huge supporters of just due to their efficiency for the last while. So I'm happy that they showed up. It's also worth mentioning as well that Lopez was out for a lot of the season, so getting a full season of him this season should be huge. Speaking of which, where do you have the Bucks this season?
The second seed. Not for any particular reason. To put them behind the Celtics, I think the first and second seed are undisputable. Basically, the Celtics and the Bucks. It's just which team you like more, and I think that I like the Celtics a little bit more with the addition of Malcolm Brogdon. The Bucks brought back all their key guys, and I think they're just going to be a really good team. They have Chris Middleton back for the beginning of the season. Brook Lopez will be back, so I think they'll just be a really good team. I don't really have a specific reason for why they'll be behind the Celtics. I think it's going to be really, really close. I just personally like the Celtics team a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. They're running it back essentially, and I look at them as one of the best regular seasons, if honestly the best regular season teams of the last 5 years. And I see them just continuing that run in this year. All their players, I don't see any regression. The only player that you could argue could regress, Drew Holiday, is starting to get a little older. We'll see maybe if his defense slides a little bit. But even when it comes to playoff time, it'll be fine, and I think it'll be covered up for in the regular season. The only other player with any age to them, maybe Brook Lopez, but I think you're getting a full season of Lopez, and I think it's going to be a good full season. So yeah, I just have them as the first seed. I think they're slightly better than the Celtics, but they're definitely interchangeable. I don't have like a huge argument either way. I just have faith in the Bucks more than the Celtics. But moving on to last year's 4 seed, the Philadelphia 76ers. Where do you have them?
I
this
gave them a
season?
B. Oh, sorry, yeah, for the grading, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I give them a B. I kind of like the Harden trade, but not at the same time because Harden was really bad. The narrative that Harden was better on the Sixers than the Nets is actually wrong. He's statistically a little bit worse on the Sixers last season. I think it's better than having no Ben Simmons, of course. But again, I can't. I think the grade is just mid, so I give them B for that. Maxey and Embiid were both great. Embiid was arguably the MVP. Maxey broke out and he was amazing, especially after the Ben Simmons trade. And like even before that, I think Ben Simmons just not playing was really good for him and for his development. But really, I could not give them higher than a B because they performed so poorly in the playoffs. Honestly, at one point, I thought the Raptors were going to complete the first 3-0 comeback in history. But in the second round, they just really flamed out and it wasn't really close. And I think Harden needed to perform better, especially. So I just gave them a B.
Yeah, that's fair for sure. I gave him a B minus. I think MVP candidate Joel Embiid was paired with James Harden mid-season, and that attempt to push the team deep in the playoffs didn't really come to fruition. What ended up occurring was that disappointing second round loss to the Heat. Even though you could argue that they were the 4 seed, and technically that loss is to be expected, when you put together Joel Embiid and Harden, if you don't get out of the second round, definitely a disappointment. You do have incredibly encouraging play from Maxey. You still had another solid season from Toby, although I think if this team's going to go far, he's going to need to get back to what he was the season before, which was just ever so slightly better. But yeah, the only grade I can see giving them is a B minus. I think B is fair, but even then it might be a little too generous because this team they underperformed when, even though they were the 4 seed, they added James Harden midway through. You could argue that they should have had more wins if they had him the whole season, and they flame out. And honestly, there was a point where I did believe the Raptors were coming back too. So for sure, I think B is fair, and B minus in my opinion is more fair. But where do you have them this season?
I had them as a 4th seed again. I think Harden's going to be better this season. I don't think he's going to return to anywhere close to first season Brooklyn Nets Harden. But I think he's going to be really good. He can be a guy that averages like 22 and 11 maybe. And that's a really good James Harden. I think he's lost a bunch of weight in the offseason, and that'll make him a lot better because last season what he was lacking was a lot of his explosiveness and getting to the rim, and I think losing some weight will help with that. Maxi's only going to get better. I think Toby's going to be roughly the same, and Embiid's going to have another MVP type performance. I wouldn't be surprised if he even won the MVP. I just don't have them better than the Celtics or the Bucks. Like, very clearly, those teams are better than the Sixers in my opinion. And I actually have my favorite team, the Nets, above them, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I have them as the 3 seed. They're running it back with their favorite infinite free throw duo of Embiid and Harden. They added D'Anthony Melton, PJ Tucker. Both are going to be slightly underrated acquisitions. PJ Tucker, some people are starting to talk about, which is nice, but Melton is important too. I see them each actually playing a really solid amount of games, potentially 60 plus for both of them again. This season, Embiid is definitely going to be an MVP candidate again. Harden should hopefully improve from last season. He was just very mediocre last season. He was an all-star, but barely. And if he can get back to, first season Brooklyn Nets Harden, he's only 33. Like, he's not completely over the hill. His playmaking is still incredible. I see them being consistent this season, actually, with their 2 stars, and with Toby and Maxi both as like consistent supporting stars, and that big four could all average 17, 18 plus. They're almost like the Raptors, like, who average all 15 plus for all their starters, but just with a better duo, FEV and Pascal versus Embiid and Harden. And that's another just consistent team. This is just a better consistent team, and I see them in the regular season then being the 3 seed.
Yeah, on D'Anthony Melton though, a lot of people are talking about PJ Tucker actually, but I think D'Anthony Melton needs to be talked about a lot more. On the Grizzlies, I thought he was so good, especially the 22 games I think that Ja missed, where they went like 20-2. He was so good for them, and I was really frustrated that the Grizzlies actually traded him. I think like replacing Danny Green with D'Anthony Melton will help them a lot. Danny Green, I remember one game last season against the Nets, just like airballed 3 in a row, and the Sixers fan, being how they are, like boo them infinitely. So I think he's actually going to be a spark plug off the bench, and that'll help boost them a lot.
Yeah, they traded a first round pick for him. There's a reason why they're excited about what he brings to this team, and I agree. I think that's the underrated acquisition. Now people are talking about PJ Tucker, which is nice. He had a great season last year, but Melton also did, and I really think he's going to be an important piece to replace Danny Green. Moving on to last year's 5th seed, we have the Toronto Raptors. What did you have them as last year?
I give them a B plus. They had a surprising playoff run. I thought they were going to be okay at the beginning of the season, but I didn't expect them to make the 5th seed. Like, that's crazy to me. Siakam was incredibly underrated. He was an all NBA type player, and he was amazing the whole season, stepping in as a center a lot of the times because the Raptors still are lacking that center position, but he played so well. Obviously, they had the Rookie of the Year, Scotty Barnes. He's so good on both ends of the ball. He can space the floor. He has a really nice mid-range game, and he clamps everyone. I remember specific games where I was getting really frustrated, and most recently he was guarding Harden even full court and was clamping him, right? So I think Scotty's only going to get better, and I don't think you can give them lower than a B+. I just don't have them as an A, because to me an A needs to go farther than the first round, but they had like the best season they could possibly have.
I'm going to disagree with you. I gave them an A minus. I think they're coming off that horrific season down in Tampa. This bounce back year should be greatly appreciated by the Raptors faithful. They had all-star Fred VanVleet and all-NBA Pascal Siakam lead the team of starters, who all average 15 plus points a game on the season to a solid record in 5th seed. There are 0 players under contract for next season above the age of 30, so this team has time to grow and improve, along with a decent amount of cap room. So even though many fans may have been disappointed by the early playoff exit, I think it's definitely fair to talk about. The season was filled with positives for this young team. I only see them improving, especially with Scotty Barnes as well. I will disagree with you. His spacing is the one thing he's lacking, but I definitely see that improving. If he can continue to up that 3-point game, get that to a respectable average, say 34, 35, can knock down those open corner threes that he has been seen to do, along with, of course, the incredible defense, then for sure, this team only has upwards to go. With that being said, where do you have him this season?
I have them as a 7th seed actually, so they're in the play-in tournament for me. And I don't think they're really going to get worse per se. I just have a lot of the teams around them getting better. I think Scotty's going to improve a lot, and that's really going to be what boosts them to the 7th seed. I think they have the potential to drop out, but I just have a lot of other teams improving. For example, the Hawks around them that would push them below the Hawks. So I don't really have a specific reason why they drop, other than the fact the teams around them got better.
Ooh, below the Hawks is something we're going to have to get into in a minute. I see them running it back with the addition of Otto Porter Jr. and that young growing team. Otto Porter Jr. is a stud as well. I see everyone only getting better. I only see them falling 1 seed down to the 6th seed. The teams above them, they got better as well, but I don't see. I just see them staying as the 6th seed. The team that I see improving above them is the Nets, but I don't see the Hawks improving above them. We can get to the Hawks seeding and we can argue that later, but the Raptors, yeah, maybe they lose a seed, but they do get better. I do agree with you on that front, but I see them staying consistent. I think they're still super underrated. Um, the team has just more firepower than the Hawks right now. The Hawks lost important pieces. The Raptors didn't. The Raptors only gained pieces. I did say earlier that they had no players under contract above 30, but I believe they did bring back Thad Young for 1 more year. He wasn't under contract at the time, as well as the fact that they did add in Otto Porter. Um, People on this team only get better. That's the thing. So I see them staying as the 6th seed.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's debatable, but we'll get to that when we get to the Hawks.
Yeah. So last year's 6th seed then we have, which is the Chicago Bulls. Where did you have them last year?
I gave them a B. They made the playoffs for the first time in years. DeMar was an All NBA player. He was amazingly good. I think he was really good in the Spurs as well. Just it's the Spurs, so not a lot of people talked about it. He improved his playmaking, especially there, and I think it showed pretty well on the Bulls. Levine was good. I think he played exactly how I expected him to play, so Levine was just good. Lonzo being injured was kind of a bummer because I was really, really excited to see them. Caruso being injured was also a bummer because Caru goat, and I love to watch him, and I think they would have been better with him. Well, they had a really easy schedule to begin the season, so they jumped off to a really hot start, and then they dropped because they had like the second hardest schedule at the end of the season, which is kind of expected. They could have been better in the playoffs, but did anyone really expect them to beat like a good team that's the Bucks? Like no. So really, they just did what we expected. A bright spot though I would say is Ayo Dosunmu. He was really really good and not talked about enough. He's really good defensively. He's very long and he can play a very good offensive role. But I think I just give them a B because they were exactly what I expected.
Yeah, I gave them a B as well. DeMar was everything this team could ask for and way more in the regular season, along with the play of fellow All-Star Zach LaVine. I was a huge DeMar fan, especially in his Spurs games. Every time I turn on the end of his Spurs game, you'd see DeMar drop like 3 straight mid-ranges and close out the game. This guy was insanely clutch. I feel like nobody realized that because in the playoffs he often faltered with the Raptors, and that's what he's remembered for, not the fact that he's still an insanely clutch player, especially in the regular season. But even then, in his 3 Spurs years, he became more of a playmaker. And when asked to, he then came to the Bulls and just became a straight scorer. He finally averaged decent splits from three, actually, which was quite impressive, including a few 3-point game winners, which were absolutely insane. Zach LaVine was better. I don't better than I expected. I really like Zach LaVine as well. I've liked him for the last few years because he's just stupid efficient, especially last season. This season, he was still good, but last season he was insane. He took a slight regression, which definitely makes sense because the team is more balanced now. This team was definitely like a super hotly debated topic last season, and they had a good regular season, which is why I placed them at a B. Agreed, the Patrick Williams and AC injuries were super unfortunate, and the early playoff exit was kind of expected for this team, so they are tough to grade. But we did actually end up landing on the same thing, so I think B is definitely the right grade. But where do you have them this year?
I have them dropping to the 8th seed, and not for any particular reason that they did, but again, I just see the teams around them improving to being better than them, like the Nets and the Hawks, for example. Vucevic needs to be talked about more. So they brought in Vucevic in the first year that he was there. He was really good. He shot really well. He was just a floor spacing big. But this season he was bad. He was straight up bad. Every time I watched him shoot, it hit like the side of the rim and it wasn't awfully close. I think they actually need to trade him. He's not great. If they could trade him for someone like Clint Capella, for example, I think that would make them a lot better because I think they still need a rim protecting big. So I don't really see them getting better, and I see the teams around them getting better. Lonzo will make them a little bit better, but I'm not really high on him coming back too well from that injury. I think he'll make them better both offensively and defensively, but not to the extent that other teams around them will improve. So I had them as the eighth seed.
That's interesting. Again, I'm very excited to get to the Hawks because I have the Bulls as the 7th seed above the Hawks. I agreed that I do believe the Nets get better than them. Maybe it's optimistic, but I believe the Bulls stay mostly healthy this season. They're better than the Hawks then, and thus will make the 7th seed this season. Lonzo should come back and be. I think he'll still be solid after this injury. He's come back from a few injuries in the past and been fine. AC and Williams should both be fully healthy this season. And I actually disagree. I see Vooch finding a role in this team and having a much better season than last. I'm a huge Vooch fan. I loved his last year in Orlando. The All Star year was absolutely insane for me. Well, actually, both his All Star years. He was an All Star twice in Orlando. He was insane over there. I did not like his season this year. I do agree with you. But first Chicago season, Vooch was a great player. I think he gets back to that or closer to when he finds his role more this year. Um, he's only 31, turning 32 by the start of this season. So I don't think you trade him for a Clint Capella at all. I think you need the spacing that he gives you, and I think he's going to get back to being able to space for you. He just needs to kind of come to terms with the fact that he's probably going to only average 17 again. He just needs to average a way more efficient 17. Maybe get to 20. Either that or they start splitting the roles more. And if you can get All-Star Vooch back, this team does have a shot. They should definitely make the 7th seed and stay there and make the 7th seed in the playoffs too. Get through the play-in tournament. Getting out of the first round is going to be quite tough for this team. I just don't know. I'm still kind of confused what this team is going to do in the future because they seem like a first round exit team, but I do see them making the first round before they exit. That's just me though.
Yeah, that's fair. I just think the other teams improved a lot about them around them. We'll get to that when we get to the Hawks again.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get the Hawks because I think the teams like the Raptors and Bulls are still going to be solid. The issue, the Raptors have a future and direction. The Bulls, though, I will say, I don't know about the direction of them. It's going to be interesting what happens to the Bulls like 2, 3 years from now. Moving on to the next team, though, we do have the Brooklyn Nets. What do you have for the Nets last year?
Oh, I'm a Nets fan, so this really pains me to say it. A straight up F. They sucked. They're a complete failure. They were in the play-in tournament. It was ridiculous how bad they were, and then they got swept in the playoffs. Although that season was a lot closer than many people think, but it was still completely disappointing. Kyrie's vaccination situation, of course, was a whole mess. Kyrie and KD underperformed in the playoffs, especially KD. Like that was the worst I think I've ever seen him play. Harden traded mid-season. He basically just gave up on the team. And I'm excited about Ben for the next season, but again, I don't know, so I don't think I can give the Nets too much credit for that trade yet. I would say one bright spot for them was Cam Thomas. He doesn't get talked about enough. He was a straight like flamethrower. He's so good at scoring. I remember this one game against against the Knicks, that he hit the game winner on a deep three, and it was just a beautiful game. But yeah, I can't give them anything better. We expected them to almost win a championship, make the finals or conference finals for sure. But they got swept in the first round. They're a complete failure. I can't give them anything higher than F.
Yeah, I don't even have words for this team. I gave them a D minus. I don't know if it's a full F because at least they made the playoffs. I feel like an F would have been like I mean, this was a pretty monumental collapse, but they at least put up somewhat of a fight. Katie was terrible in the playoffs. I mean, Seth Curry, they did acquire him as well. That's hugely important. Um, and he was awesome in that season and in the playoffs because Seth Curry's always awesome. The I will argue that I think when we look at this team going forward, it's going to depend on how they run this team positionally because playoff Nick Claxton was the worst free throw shooter ever, like maybe in the history of the league. Playoff Nick Claxton had just like honestly the worst free throw splits I've ever seen. There was that one game. What did he miss? 10 plus free throws. He was like 1 for 11 from the line.
He missed
I
all
mean,
of them actually. I remember
he
watching
missed
that game
all
and
of them.
like hitting my table. He was 0 for 11. Yeah.
0 for 11. Sorry, my bad. Like I'm actually don't think Cam Thomas is like that awesome yet. I mean, he can score sure, but not efficiently yet. So we gotta wait till he can do that. Uh, I don't know. There wasn't a lot of bright spots. we're gonna have to look at next season for them, which is very important. So where do you have them next season?
Ooh, I'm very apprehensive about this and hopeful, but I have them as a third seed. I think Ben's going to be really good. So if you look at Ben's stats when like he came into the league, he's created the most open threes ever since he's come in the league. And if you look at who's around him, Kyrie, Katie, Seth, Joe Harris, all he has is shooters. So I think the Nets can run him as the 4 or the 5. And he'll really bring that defensive presence that the Nets really need. We did lose Bruce Brown, Blake Griffin, Aldridge, and that kind of sucks. But Aldridge and Blake barely played anyways, and Ben fills in Bruce's role quite well. So I'm very, very excited for them. Kyrie obviously can play the full season this year. And again, people hate on Kyrie, and I guess that's warranted because of his off-court shenanigans. But still, he's ridiculous. I think I would definitely bet on him this season getting another 50, 40, 90 season. KD is going to come with a fire. I think people were saying that KD isn't going to want to play that well because he requested a trade and then took it back are kind of wrong because KD's just a straight baller. Like, he'll play no matter what. He loves the game. So I think he's going to play the best possibly he can. And I think with Ben's addition, I think they'll be a lot better.
Yeah, that's fair. I have them as the 5 seed though. I think they'll struggle in parts in this season. I still think they'll be awesome. But they'll definitely struggle at parts in this regular season, and as such, will only make the 5 seed despite their immense talent they have on paper. It's going to take time for this team to come together and actually become a winning basketball team. There was also a lot of turnover. They added Royce O'Neal, they added TJ Warren, both super underrated acquisitions. But they and as well, they're gonna have to figure out how to fit in Ben Simmons to this team. Personally, as I was trying to touch on earlier, I think Ben Simmons should play the center position against most matchups. I think you got to try it, and I think if it doesn't work or it does work, but they don't run it for a while, those are gonna be games they lose whether it works or not. Uh, I think finding out how to use Ben Simmons is going to take time, hence why I have him as the 5 seed. But I think if you put him as a center, he's no worse than Nick Claxton. And then you're gonna have to find a way to replace the loss of LMA, Bruce Brown, Dragic, Drummond, and BG. So I think this just takes time, and it's thus I have as the 5 seed.
Yeah, well, I think the additions, again, need to be talked about more. TJ Warren, like Bubble Jordan, he was so good. And I think he'll recognize his role in this team, and I think he can come off the bench and give like a solid 11, 12 points a game. And Royce O'Neal is a wing defender that we really needed. Again, I don't know why the Nets traded a first rounder for him. I don't think I would have done that. I don't think he's worth a first rounder, but I think he'll bring a defensive presence along with Ben that will solidify an identity in the Nets, and I think they'll be good.
Yeah, it's definitely fair. I mean, they could be super solid and make a high seed. They could also slip even farther than the 5th seed. I don't really see it happening. I think the 5th seed is kind of where I have them. Um, but they are really just a really tough team to grade because yeah, last season we had them as championship contenders, and they did not live up to that at all. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they are this season. I do agree with you. Earlier, you touched on the fact that I do believe KD will be energized to play. I think this whole team is energized to play. I think even though Kyrie seems never to be energized by anything, they have people to prove wrong, and I think this team is going to do that for sure.
I think Kyrie's going to play a lot better than people expect. It's his contract year. He's has 1 year left on his belt, and he wants his money. Like, usually he's motivated by things that, like, who even knows, like social justice problems. But I think he will be motivated by the fact that it is his contract year, and all of last season, everyone was just talking smack about him. So I think Kyrie's going to really just shock everyone of the season.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I don't know if I would bet on a 50, 40, 90 season because that's a tough thing to bet on, but he's an awesome player. When he plays, he's one of the best players in basketball for sure. His efficiency is truly amazing. So definitely I could see this team being a tops 3 seed. And I saw a stat recently where almost all of the last championship teams in the last like 30, 40 years were all top 3 seeds. So that might be what they need to be to compete this season. But if they can get there, I do definitely see a playoff run coming.
For sure.
Yeah, next up we have the 8 seed Cleveland Cavaliers. What did you give them last season?
I gave them A minus, and I think this is the first team that I would give an A that did not make like a deep playoff run. It was so unexpected. Like, I thought the Cavs were going to be really bad last season, but Garland was amazing. Like, Garland maybe was like a top 4 assist guard in the league. Sexton was injured, and he really just put it on their back. Mobley was amazing. I think he might have been the best defensive rookie that we've seen in maybe 20 years. Like, since not 20 years, sorry. Like since Tim Duncan. when Jared Allen went out. Again, Jared Allen was amazing too, and I think he's really underrated. I'm sad the Nets lost him. But even when he went out, Mobley held his own for a while, and their defense didn't slip until a little bit later. Kevin Love was a great veteran. I didn't expect him to play, to be honest, because the past couple of seasons he kind of just like threw the ball and did not really care, half-hearted. But this season he bought in, and he was a great veteran who spaced the floor and actually defended pretty well. They ended up as the eighth seed, and I think they could have ended a little bit higher if the injuries didn't happen. But yeah, I don't think you can give them anything lower than an A minus because they exceeded all their expectations. The players exceeded all their expectations. So A minus is an appropriate grade for me.
I agree. I gave them an A minus. They went from 22 and 15 to 44 and 38. That's very impressive, especially given, as you mentioned, a season where Colin Sexton went down really early on, and he wasn't good when he played. Garland was an all-star. Jared Allen was really close to being an all-star. Mobley was really close to being the rookie of the year. As you said, I think the biggest point was Love bought back in, and everyone who played significant minutes contributed to winning, which is just incredible for this team. Without making the playoffs, though, they do get knocked down a little, so hence why the A minus instead of an A. Combined with the fact that I just don't know about the Karis LeVert acquisition, it does make sense in a world where they don't and they haven't brought back Colin Sexton. I just don't know if that like helps them a tremendous amount. So that I'm still not 100% sure on. So they definitely get an A minus. But I love this team. Chetty Osman's one of the most underrated players in basketball. I'll never hear someone talk about Chetty Osman, but that bench with him and Kevin Love was awesome. Um, Markkinen was still solid, although I feel like he can just be better. He's still so young, so this team has room to grow with him. Isaac Okoro is still there, and I think he can definitely grow. Of course, this team next season is definitely going to depend on how much better Mobley gets, but he was definitely incredible. So yeah, for sure, this team's gonna be interesting looking at next season, but just as a season in isolation, completely turning around and doubling their wins, definitely an A minus. But what do you have them as this season?
I have them as a ninth seed. I don't see them getting too much better, despite Mobley being better and maybe Colin Sexton coming back. I think Levert will also have a better season. And I think Garland will be amazing. Again, I just think the teams around them have just gotten better, like significantly better. I don't see them improving to the extent that they do. So I think they'll make the play in and they'll make some noise, but I don't think they get anything higher than the ninth seed.
Okay, that's fair. I have them as the ninth seed as well. They secure the spot just mostly running it back with the full season of Karis LeVert and an improved Mobley. I just don't think they have the star power to move up, and all the other teams got better. This Cavs team does have some players like Kevin Love who are getting older. We don't know what they're going to be next season. This team was a really nice balanced team, but with a lot of young players. So if they all improve, they could definitely move up. Although I just have zero faith in Karis LeVert, honestly, on this team. And as such, I just see them being the nine seed. Um, Especially as I spoke about earlier, a lot of the teams that I see moving up, like the Nets, the Raptors, the Bulls, and the Hawks, who I have over them, the Cavs just aren't better than any of those teams. It is definitely possible that they make it out of the play, and I mean, all you need to do is win a few games too in their position. But even with that being said, I just see them as the nine seed. I don't really see it being that easy to debate.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, moving on to our next team. We have the Atlanta Hawks, the team that we've been most excited to talk about. Where do you have the Atlanta Hawks based on a grade last year?
I gave them a C, and that's because the previous season they had a conference finals run, and then they were in the play-in, and they barely made the play-in at the end of the season, and they lost in the first round. I think in 5 games. Trey was still unbelievable. Like Trey is, I think, close to the level of Luka Doncic, and he's talked about a lot. So I'm not even gonna say he's underrated, but he was just unbelievable. And I think without DeAndre Hunter, they carried their weight like a lot better. I think they still need to trade John Collins because he doesn't want to be there. Capella was great, and Collins fits in with Trey really well. But I think the only reason that they don't get anything higher than a C is because they were just disappointing with the expectations we had of a conference finals run. But again, I don't want to give them anything lower than that because Trey was unbelievable and all their individual players were pretty good. So also like Kevin Herter was amazing as well. So I give them a C.
I gave them a C as well. Yeah, exactly. A team that went to the conference finals just a year prior, then only makes the eighth seed. The only grade the season deserves is a C. we'll talk about their next season because that seems to be a debated topic. You also made an interesting point that he's close to Doncic. Kind of. That's really tough to say, though. I don't see Trey being like a generational, like when we look back in 20 years, like, oh, Trey Young, whereas like Doncic is this guy that a lot of people really see. Like, I don't see Trey Young winning an MVP. I think it's Doncic should definitely win an MVP at some point in his career. I don't know if I see them being close. Maybe right now they're close, but I think Doncic keeps pulling away, especially how insane Doncic has been in the playoffs. Whereas Trey Young last year, I mean, th- they lost in five, and he was actually horrific compared to Doncic. And even when his team has not done well in the playoffs, he's still been absolutely incredible in all of his playoff runs, like to an insane degree. So I don't see them being that close. I think that's an interesting statement. I don't know why I'm focusing on that more than the team, but yeah, they were horrific to start last season. They kind of came back, reeled it back in, ended up getting out of the play and into the playoffs, but only to get murdered in the first round. So yeah, for sure, C grade. But now the topic we've been waiting for. Where do you have the Hawks this year?
The sixth seed, so just slightly out of the play-in tournament. And I think that's for a couple of reasons, but obviously the main reason is DeJounte Murray. I'm actually surprised that you have them quite low because I think you love DeJounte because you love the Spurs players. I think Trey and DeJounte will be like a great assisting duo. Their playmaking will be great, and I think right off the bat, their chemistry is going to be good. I don't think they have much to figure out. I think DeJounte and Trey might need to hash it out who plays off ball a little bit, but I think Trey can actually play off ball if he just buys in. DeJounte, I think, was actually a really good catch and shoot player last year, if I'm not mistaken, but his pull up game and stuff was not good. So I think they can both play off ball, and I think they'll both buy in. I think Collins and Capella will complement them both really well. They did lose a piece in Danilo Gallinari, but I think that's okay with DeAndre Hunter being back. Again, I think they should trade John Collins, and I think they will, and I think they'll do it to improve the team. And DeJounte, I think, hides some of Trey's weaknesses because he is a good defender, and I think that improves them from last season, and I see them as a sixth seed this year.
Trading John Collins, first of all, is an interesting statement. I want to start with that really quick, just because you got to trade him for fair value. They did end up re-signing him, yes, to a fairly significant deal.
It was a max
That
contract,
deal,
yeah.
it was a max contract. Okay, a max contract of like 125 million, yes, over like 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. So that's a tough contract to move, though his upside is incredible. There was a point where he was 50, 40, 80 to just 2 seasons ago, and he's still been a very efficient player in the last few years. So I actually do like John Collins. I know he's not maybe the best defensive player, but he's just he gets up and he also shoots. Like, he's just incredible at spacing the floor. He does a lot for that team. I'm not the biggest DeAndre Hunter fan. I don't hate him at all. He definitely needs to improve a bit for them to be really good this season. I don't like he's a good 3 point shooter, so I can definitely appreciate that from him. Again, signing DeAndre Hunter to a contract, I don't know. I don't believe they've done it yet. Is going to be an interesting topic for sure. He's on that last year of his team option this year, and then what you sign him to is going to be interesting. I could see him getting a similar contract to Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's also on this team, and I do like. But here's the thing. Okay, I do like DeJounte Murray. They lose a few pieces and they add him. He was coming off an All-Star appearance, and although I see this team moving up in the standings to the 8th seed, despite the fact that they made all these additions, I don't see them being better than the Bulls or Raptors. The additions and losses this team actually even out more than you'd think they do. Um, this team also loses two very important players that you didn't mention. This team loses DeLon Wright, but more importantly, this team loses Kevin Herter. Kevin Herter is straight up just a stud. Kevin Herter is one of the most underrated players in basketball. Um, he's just stupid efficient. He's an absolute 3 point flamethrower. Whenever, like, he takes more threes than twos, and he still shoots 45, 39, 12 points a game. That's a guy that's just every team wants, and you now don't have. You replace him with DeJounte Murray, who's a great defender and obviously a great playmaker. He's an incredible player, but he's not an awesome 3 point shooter. Again, you lose Gallo as well, who was a nice 3 point shooter off the bench for you. The additions and loss of this team just, and plus you also have two ball dominant guards. I agree with you. They can find a way to work together, but it's going to take time. I think this team could struggle early, just like last year, end up as the 8th seed, and get into the play-in tournament. I could see them also being the 8 seed post play-in tournament. They could definitely beat the 7 seed, but they're going to be in that play-in as the 8 seed. They're not as good as the Bulls. The star power is somewhat similar. The Bulls are slightly deeper. I think that the Bulls are going to mesh early, just like last year. I personally think that DeMar plus Levine is pretty similar to Murray plus Trae Young, but and then the argument between Vooch and Collins is close. But I just like the Bulls bench a little better, and I think they gel better. I just think they play a better regular season. If you want to debate that one, that one's fair. But I don't see them being. Do you have them better as the Raptors?
Yeah, I do.
I don't see that. The Raptors are gonna gel. The Raptors are gonna play great. Everyone on the Raptors gets better. Um, the Raptors didn't lose anybody. Like running it back is the thing that I just think is underrated. Like when you run it back, you've been with these guys. You know how this team's gonna work. Sure, maybe that makes it easier for the opposing teams to figure out, but the schemes run by Nick Nurse will be just he has us all set. He only had time to improve, especially with no turnover or turmoil with his roster. Everyone's like on that team is ready to go and is energized. I think there could be lots of questions around this Hawks team. Uh, DeJounte Murray is definitely gonna be solid, but I just don't see this team being better than an 8 seed. I don't have faith in the Hawks. I think that conference year was a fluke, and obviously after last season, I mean it was a fluke. They've changed this season. I love Bogdan Bogdanovic. I don't. I love John Collins. I loved Kevin Herter though, and I think DeLon Wright is also an important player for this team. They did lose a bunch of randoms that don't matter, so I won't bring that up a lot. But yeah, but it's tough. If they're better than the 8 seed, I wouldn't say I'd be shocked if they were the 7 seed, but I will say I would be shocked if they were the 6 seed. I think that's just a big jump.
Yeah, I think the Raptors and Hawks are going to be really close this season. I think the reason why I have the Hawks just slightly above the Raptors is because of star power. I think Siakam's a great player. Fred VanVleet is a great player, but I think it's not close to the duo of DeJounte and Trae and what they're going to be. I think the Raptors might be a little bit more well-rounded. Actually, they are more well-rounded and deeper than the Hawks. But I think that's something that will hurt the Hawks more in the play-in and the playoffs. When actual strategies are implemented against them. I think in the regular season, getting to that 6th seed, like a lack of depth doesn't hurt them too much. And I think we disagree how well they're going to gel instantly. I think DeJounte and Trae are going to gel much faster than you think. So I don't think they're going to really struggle at the beginning of the season. Last season, when they struggled at the beginning, I was kind of surprised, and I think that was sort of a fluke as well. So I think they'll be better this season. But again, I don't necessarily completely disagree with you that the Raptors could be better, so I think it's really close.
Yeah, the other thing is the Raptors are gonna again be an awesome defensive team. I know they had DeJounte Murray, and I know half the reason why they added him is for his defense. But just one player, especially one perimeter player, I know they do have Clint Capella as a rim protector as well, still there. I don't think they get significantly better on defense. And the offense was already great. But again, like I said, you lose pieces. You lose 3-point shooting, which I think is all important with a team like this. So yeah, I just have them as the 8 seed. I don't know. If they gel instantly and DeJounte Murray fleshes out his like his 3 level scoring and they just work together perfectly and they complement each other's faults because they do. They do. They are a good tandem in the backcourt. This isn't like one of those redundant tandems where we have like 2 small ball dominant guards or whatever. Or the opposite, 2 guards that can't shoot. Like if you're, it's not like the Pistons, we have like Killian Hayes and Kate Cunningham or something. You have a nice mix here, for sure. But yeah, 8 is the best I can do for them.
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to agree on that. We'll just have to see this
No,
season.
for sure. Moving on, we have Charlotte Hornets. It's gonna be interesting. What do you have last season? What do you have in that?
I gave them a B, and I think I was just really frustrated with their play and performance. Lamelo Ball broke out, and he's one of my favorite players to watch right now. He's so entertaining. He's amazing. His splits are actually surprisingly good, and I think this season he'll improve attacking the basket. And I don't think his 3-point shooting is a fluke either, and he'll maintain that. Miles Bridges also improved and had a breakout season. Speaking of Miles Bridges, though, he's just a clown. It's so disappointing what he did, and just really frustrating. But last season, those were the 2 main bright spots, I think. But I just can't. I can't give them higher than a B because of the the play-in. Sorry, like I had I had much higher expectations to them. I wanted them to make the playoffs so bad. The previous season, they also messed up the play-in, but they did it again this season, and I think that balances out with the LaMelo and Miles Bridges breakout. I think maybe I'm a little bit too harsh on them, but yeah, I give them a B.
I debated this one a decent amount. I ended up going with a B plus, but I feel like you could convince me down to a B for sure. My reasoning is they won 10 more games. I know they didn't get out the play-in, but they did win 10 more games. It was much more impressive than the way they got in the play-in this year because the East got stronger. They had their first All-Star since Kemba. Bridges had an insane breakout season. Let's just ignore what happened after. Just we're talking about last season in isolation, and then we'll get mad at them this season. Um, yeah, the gripe is that they just had an extremely disappointing play-in exit. So for sure, I think a B is fair, but I will say everyone improved. LaMelo improved. I'm not going to disagree with you either. I think the three-point shooting could definitely be sustainable. Obviously, he's a great playmaker. He's just a really interesting player. He's still stupid young. Just recently turned 21. So all the players on this team really are going to improve. Should have improved, except for Bridges. And because of that, where did you put them this season?
I have them as a 10th seed still. And I think that's because of a couple factors. First, I think Lamelo's going to improve to like a significant degree. I think he'll probably average like 25 or more. And I think that's probably a ludicrous statement to a lot of people, but I'm just really high on LaMelo Ball. Gordon Hayward, I'm really praying that he's going to be more healthy this season. He hasn't been healthy for like the past couple of years, but I think he'll play a larger role in this season. And I think a large reason why I think that I'm not that sad that Miles Bridges, well, like I'm really sad that Miles Bridges did what he did. Obviously, it was horrible, and like he was a huge part of this team. But I think what can alleviate some of that pain and that hole that the Charlotte Hornets have is PJ Washington, and I think he was a great player last season, but I think he'll break out this season similar to what Miles Bridges did last season, and I think that'll make up for the hole in the roster that Miles Bridges leaves. So I think they'll still make the 10th seed, but I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped way below that.
Yeah, I have them as the 12 seed actually. They lose their breakout star, Miles Bridges, because he's an idiot, and they regress potentially more significantly than even this like 12 seed shows because the teams under them are really bad. They could win a really low amount of games and still make that 12 seed. I know LaMelo Ball is gonna be good. I still don't see him like carrying this team. Rozier should still be great again. He's right in his prime. He was actually pretty great last season, and actually watching Rozier highlights is really fun. His handle is actually just absurd. I haven't seen that clip where he's on the right side and he has that little yo-yo dribble and he snatches back. It's pretty. I'm actually falling in love with this game. Hayward, I do see regressing actually. And I don't see PJ Washington stepping up enough. They also lost Prez, who was a midseason acquisition. The defense of this team just doesn't get better, in my opinion, and the offense regresses significantly. So for that, I just see them being the 12 seed. And then at this point, I don't know how they move forward after this. I believe after this season, it's going to be interesting because I think Rozier is off contract. No, wow, he's under contract for a long time. My bad. Wow, okay, it's gonna be interesting to see how they move forward then after this. Because yeah, I don't know how this team gets better, but I suppose you can find someone to replace Bridges at some point. But yeah, I can't see them actually being in the play at all.
Yeah, that's fair. I just really high on LaMelo. I don't think we'll agree here either.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to the other two teams of interest, and then we'll kind of breeze through the last few. So first of all, we have the Knicks. What did you give them last year?
A D. Well, I kind of expected Julius Randle to drop off a cliff, but not to the extent that he did. He was so bad last season. I don't even know what to say. The entire team was bad. I think RJ Barrett was like really underrated. He was really good at getting to the basket. I think he can improve drawing free throws and such, but he was a great player last season. The addition of Cam Reddish, I think it was okay. He played kind of bad last season. Rose was injured the whole season, which I think really hurt them in terms of the seeding as well. But I don't think they would have been that much better to the extent that they would have made the play-in or anything. And they were just really disappointing with how like a breakout team it was like 2 years ago. So they just sucked. I gave them a D. It wasn't a complete failure because they were still with the 11th seed and they had some bright spots, but they can't get higher than a D.
No, this was my failure. This was from the 4 seed to the 11 seed. I gave them an F. This team was attempting to compete, which makes the season nothing more than a failure. Almost nothing went right for this team, and now they essentially have to run it back due to the fact that they still have a stupid amount of money in cap space. let's go over the bright spots really quick. Quentin Grimes was a huge bright spot. I love Quentin Grimes. And then he gets injured halfway through the year, so he's been out. I actually don't know his return. I believe he comes back for next season. So he was like honestly their brightest spot last season, and then he got injured. Reddish was horrific when they added him. I actually don't know his status for this season. I believe he's still on the team. Uh, Honestly, he was awful after that acquisition. I hope he's still under contract. Okay, on a team option. They're gonna have to decide on what they do with him after this season. Hopefully, he improves. He's still young, but that was bad. Randall was absolutely horrific. I did not expect that huge regression. I agree. Like he wasn't gonna be an All NBA guy again necessarily, but I actually liked him. I've liked him since like New Orleans. Like I didn't think he was bad. Like truly horrific any year after that. He wasn't great first year Knicks at all, but he was actually awesome on New Orleans, and I thought maybe he'd get back to like that if nothing else. He didn't. Uh, I don't like RJ Barrett. I think he's maybe that's like horrific because I'm a Canadian. I think he's terrible. I think he's one of the most overrated players in basketball. He's just stupid and efficient. Um, his 20 points per game it means almost nothing. It's like freaking Tim Hardaway Jr.'s 20 points per game on the Knicks a few years ago. Like it was one of the worst 20s of all time. It's like a Jerry Stackhouse 20 points a game. Like it's just so bad because of the inefficiency. Um, Fournier was good. I mean, Fournier just ran around shooting threes. He actually led in some spots on the court for 3-point shooting. He was great, don't get me wrong. But even then, he's still being paid a huge amount of money, and he's about to hit age 30. Um, that no, this team was a disaster. I don't know what kind of player Mitchell Robinson is. I don't really know if you pay him. He has like no offense. I mean, he averages more rebounds than points, which is cool. He's a great defensive player, and he's stupid efficient. But I mean, he barely shoots. I mean, they had to play Kemba because yeah, Derrick Rose got injured the whole year, and that was really unfortunate. They were actually positive before his first absence. They had a positive record, and they kind of fell off a cliff after that. And they weren't the same when he came back. He was out for a few games, came back, they weren't good, and then he got injured the rest of the season. That was kind of it. I don't know what this team does. This team is only as good as Julius Randle is, and I think they can improve next season because I don't hate this team at all. But God, they were just so bad last year. I had a decent amount of faith in them to be decent. I'd actually watch a decent amount of next games because they always end up being on Sunday mornings, so I end up watching them. And every time I'm disappointed by just how bad this team is. So yeah, that's my rant about how bad the Knicks were. I'm not a Knicks fan or anything. I just I think they're horrific, and I don't like RJ Barrett. So yeah.
Yeah, for this next season, I have them as a 12th seed. Unlike you, I hate this team. I think Randall's just gonna stay as bad as he is. Maybe a little bit better, but I think last season kind of broke him. Like sometimes players just have a down season and they never recover from it, and I think Randall's gonna be one of those players. Mitchell Robinson is like a garbage man's version of Robert Williams. People like to talk about him like he's so good. He's not. He's honestly not that good. I think RJ Barrett might improve a little bit, but he'll stay more or less the same. Emmanuel quickly is like the same, and I just think they're just gonna suck and not mesh well. And I think they're just gonna go back to that poverty franchise that we know the Knicks as. Rose will return next season, but I think you're a little bit higher on Rose than me because I think with his age and coming back from a whole season injury, he's not going to be as impactful as he was before. He's going to win them a couple of games here and there, but I don't think it's going to improve to the point that they'll make anything higher than the 12th seed. I hate this team. The Knicks are a poverty franchise, so have them as the 12th seed.
Okay, I have them as a 10 seed. They get a full year of D Rose. I think where you're missing here is they add Jalen Brunson this team, and because of that, I think they can lock down the play-in spot. I still don't really understand who Julius Randle is, and this team will definitely go as far as he'll take them. But I think he definitely improves. I think he has some weight taken off his shoulders, unlike last year, because he has a good, efficient scorer around him that can be consistently good in Jalen Brunson. Maybe Jalen Brunson's a little overpaid, sure, but I still think he's going to end up having a great season. Um, I mean, I don't know who RJ Barrett is. I don't know who Cam Reddish is. So if they're the 11 seed, I wouldn't be shocked. I can see the Wizards taking this 10 seed. It's going to be very close between the two. I actually like a lot of the additions the Wizards made. I think adding Brunson just gives the Knicks a little bit of edge. But if they're the 11 seed, I'm not shocked. Speaking of which, I believe our next team would be the Wizards. So what did you have the Wizards as last year?
I have them as a B minus. To be honest, I don't really watch them at all because it's the Wizards and they were really boring. Beal had an injury. I liked Kuz and Porzingis for them actually quite a bit, but everything else was a disappointment. They were the 11th seed. They could have been much better, I think, as a team. And Kuz and Porzingis were the only bright spots. Beal kind of dropped off. I think he'll get back to his normal production this season, but last season was just a disappointment. But it wasn't that bad because again, it's the Washington Wizards, and we didn't really expect them to make any noise anyways. But kind of disappointing, so I have them as a B minus.
Yeah, I gave them a C. Beal regressed. They were just okay. They got worse after their surprisingly good start to the season, and now they seem directionless. We can talk about what they're going to do next season. Speaking of directionless, that Beal contract. But yeah, I think the more interesting thing to talk about is next season because yeah, I don't disagree with you. I like Kuz. Uh, KCP was good for them, and then they shipped him out of town for players I actually do like. But I don't know. This team was bad. This team had a worse record than the Knicks. That's that's bad. See, but where do you have them this year?
I have them just out of the play-in as the 11th seed. I just don't really like the team, to be honest. People like Beal a lot more than I do. There was a point where people were thinking of trading Jalen Brown for Beal. Like, don't even entertain that anymore. Jalen Brown is infinitely better than Beal, in my opinion, anyways. I don't think he's that good of a player. He's getting paid what, like 250 over 5 years now. That's
Stupid.
that's crazy. Like, I don't know why the Wizards would do that. Porzingis was good last season, but I think he's going to be more or less the same. Maybe in a little bit worse than last season because for some reason, as soon as Porzingis joins like a new team, like he'll pop off and then he'll just kind of die off a little bit, and I think that's going to happen. Kuzma, I think is going to get better. I actually really love Kyle Kuzma's game, and like his off-court shenanigans, and I love his personality. But other than that, I don't really think the Wizards have that much going for them. They're going to get a little bit better than last season because Beal is going to be healthier and Porzingis full season. Maybe I think he's probably going to get injured again, knowing Porzingis, but have them as the 11th seed.
Yeah, I do as well. We kind of got here at different places, but I still have them as the 11th seed. Beal and Mr. Tingus Pingus barely miss out on the play, and they're just a confusing basketball team. If they make the 10 season after like Randall's bad, I would not be shocked because they add Will Barton, Monte Morris, DeLon Wright. All those are solid additions. I think Monte Morris is also another one of those just like stupid underrated basketball players. He's so good. That trade wasn't terrible where they trade away KCP and then they end up acquiring Barton and Morris. DeLon Wright can definitely help this team a little bit as well. Beal is the worst contract in all of basketball right now. Yeah, unless no, Wall's not under contract anymore. Yeah, Beal's the worst contract in basketball right now. It's truly awful. I can't believe. I agree with you. Jalen Brown's better. I don't know who's trading for Bradley Beal. I don't know why he would sign that contract. I don't know why the team. I guess he wants to get his money, but I don't know why the team's signing that contract. Um, I, I don't see it working out. I don't see the addition of Porzingis with Beal actually making them to a play-in spot at all.
Yep.
This team was bad offensively last year. They're bad defensively. Um, they'll get better offensively, but even then, Barton doesn't help their defensive. I don't think Morris helps their defense a lot. DeLon Wright's only gonna help it marginally. 11 seed. I don't know. This team's just so confusing.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can kind of run through the next few teams pretty quickly. I do want to touch on the Pacers really quick. So, what did you have them as last year?
A B plus. The only reason why I had them as slightly above average was Tyrese Halliburton. I love that trade for them. They needed to trade one of Sabonis or Miles Turner, and they ended up trading Sabonis for Tyrese Halliburton. Which again, the Kings like come on, like really, Tyrese was amazing for them as soon as he joined their team. He went crazy. I don't know his exact stats, but he was a lot better than he was on the Kings. But other than that, they were just kind of just a mid-season, and then nothing else stood out for me for them. So really, it was just like kind of average. But Tyrese Halliburton gives him a B plus.
Yeah, this team finally. I give him a B plus as well. This team finally hits that reset button, and they did it in the best way possible, in my opinion. They acquired one of the best young players in the league, and a player in Healed who could fit onto every team in the league. So if they ship him by the deadline next season, I wouldn't be surprised because I think any team in basketball wants Healed. They still have Turner, Duarte, Jalen Smith, and Isaiah Jackson all as young players under contract next season. So they do have something to move forward with, although they'll be very good next season. I'm just so happy they finally hit the reset button. They were stuck in that 8 seed mediocrity. Then they kind of start falling off this season. They trade away Brogdon at the end of this year. They trade away Sabonis over Turner, which isn't the worst decision. Yeah, you go get Halliburton. I just pulled up his stats. He was shooting 46-41 on the Kings for 14 points a game, and 7.5 assists. And then he goes to Indiana where he shoots 50-42 on with 10 assists on 18 points a game, which is actually a huge jump. The efficiency is awesome. The assist is awesome. I don't know why the Kings would ever trade Halliburton. He should have been the only untouchable on that entire franchise, and they let him go. Couldn't tell you why. So yeah, I give him a B plus. You can't give him an A minus because they were a terrible team, but I do like every move they made. Um, really quickly, what did you have them as next season?
The 14th seed. I think they're going to be better than the Magic because of Halliburton, but I don't think. Well, I think Beal. No, not Beal. Sorry. Healed. And Turner are still going to be good. But there's just something about this team that just doesn't mesh well together, I think. Halliburton will give them a little bit of a boost. But I think it's still a tanking team, and there will be games where they'll lose on purpose as well. So I have them as relatively low as a 14th seed.
Okay, yeah, I have them as 13 seed. I have no faith in the Pistons post Grant trade. I'll end up putting the Pistons as the 15 seed. I think they're better than the Magic at the 14 seed. I agree with you there. They're in a full rebuild, but they have Heald and Halliburton. Again, I think they might trade Heald. But like I said, there's still Duarte and Turner. They still have a few pieces that can win basketball games on this team. So I just slightly edge out the other two teams. Really quick, what were your grades for? We might as well do them at the same time. What were your Magic and Pistons grades?
Pistons was B plus just because of Cade. Cade was bad for the first month, but he was really good. I think after that first month, he can be a franchise player for them, bucket getter. He's gonna improve at playmaking. He can't shoot like really well right now, but I think that'll come with time. I like the Marvin Bagley trade actually. A lot of people didn't, but I think they'll fit well together. Marvin Bagley's a bust as of right now, but I think he'll play a lot better on the Pistons. They didn't do much else, so I just gave them a B plus just because of Cade. For the Magic, I have them a B minus. It was just an expected season. They were bad. They were expected to be bad. So yeah, but a B minus because Jalen Suggs was expected to be better than he was, and he was kind of just bad for the whole season. He picked it up, but like he was just not good. So gave the Magic a B minus.
Yeah, okay. The only reason I wanted to run through these really quick is because I think our reasonings are similar, but we just didn't have the same like philosophy on grading. I just gave the Pistons a C. They were supposed to be bad, and they were really bad. I mean, C's just like whatever. I can't give them any better than that for doing that. Cade played well enough to give them hope, and Siddiq Bey and Grant were solid to keep them somewhat competitive, but then they shipped Grant, of course. Uh, what they do with Bagley and Killian Hayes is going to be interesting to see. I believe they just lack high quality young talent. So even though they tanked, I don't know. That C for them. Magic is a C minus. There are pieces to move forward here with Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter, currently being the best of the bunch. As you may have touched on, I believe you did. Suggs was terrible. Mobamba needs a contract, and again, there's the cap flexibility, but not a ton of young talent. So yeah, C minus for them. What did you have as next season for those two teams?
I had the Pistons as 13th. I could totally be convinced that they're dead last because, yeah, again, they lost Grant. But I think Cade is going to win them games. And I just really, really love Cade. He's maybe like a top 3 young player for me in the league, like in terms of my favorites, of course. And I like the Bagley trade. Losing Grant is going to make them bad. I think Siddiq Bey is going to improve, though. So I have them as a 13th seed. But again, you could totally convince me that they drop to dead last.
Yeah, I have them as dead last for sure. They're in a full rebuild. They traded away Grant. I don't like Cade as much as you do, so I'm as a 15 seed, and then Magic as the 14 seed. They go into a full rebuild. They're slightly better than the Pistons, barely. Maybe Suggs gets better. Maybe he doesn't. I just don't watch enough of these teams, honestly, to be able to rank them. I watched a Pistons game or two. I watched one Pistons game. Luka Garza hit like 3 threes. It was really cool. Now he's gone. I don't know. I don't have faith in either of these teams. But yeah, unless you have any other concluding thoughts, I think that wraps up our rankings.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. So yeah, we had to review. We have mostly summer opinions. Hawks was a big difference for the two of us, as well as the Nets. Those two are going to be interesting teams. The East is definitely interesting now. Much more competitive. I like a lot of the teams in the East. I think the top 6 is kind of locked in, and then at least guaranteed the top 2. And then the play-in is going to be super interesting between teams like the Bulls, Raptors, Hawks, Cavs, Knicks, Wizards. Where those teams line up is going to be super interesting to see. We had a lot of differences there. I don't see any of the bad teams between the 12th and 15th seed actually surprising us and being good. Yeah, this is going to be definitely an interesting year for the East for sure.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the Nets actually, to be honest. Last season was kind of a bummer for me because of Kyrie's injury. And I think last season overall was just kind of boring. I'm just excited for the season of basketball.
Yeah, for sure. That wraps up our review of the East. It's the first podcast in a while. Hopefully, we can get back with a review of the West before the season starts, which doesn't start for a while. So we have time. I have faith in us. The West is going to be interesting. It has my Pelicans on there, which I think is going to be a debated topic. Kind of like the Bulls last season, where people didn't know where they slide, and that like between maybe like the 5, 6 seed and the 10 seed, they could be anywhere in there. Honestly, there's a lot of other interesting teams in the West, so when we get to that for sure. If your favorite team wasn't here, hopefully they'll be there in the West for sure. Well, yeah, obviously they will be. Um, and hopefully we grade them appropriately. I think we had mostly similar views, so we'll see if maybe that we have more deviation in the West. But that's gonna do it for us today. I really hope you enjoyed. Make sure to hit up Dish and Heat on Instagram. Follow us on what depending on where you're watching this. This should be uploaded to YouTube, podcast on Spotify. So make sure to hit the rest of our socials so you always know when the next Dish and Heat episode's coming out. There should be more hopefully this time. And hope you all have a good one. See you next time.